Welcome to another great episode of the Alumni Podcast. We have a very special guest today, Tyler. This is a pretty amazing feat from 1969, graduating class of SAMOHI. This is going to be very exciting and informative in a lot of ways, right?
100%. Yep. So I heard about Mitch through there's a Facebook page, Santa Monica Alumni. So made a post there trying to see if anyone from different graduating classes would be interested. And he was one of the first comments to say he'd be totally welcome to be on the show. I heard he was from the class of 1969. So that's also when my father graduated high school. So he went to Loyola High School in California. But yeah, so I thought this would be a good opportunity to kind of broaden our audience or kind of diversify a little bit here. So I'm very thankful that Mitch was happy to be on. Unfortunately, his camera isn't working for us right now, but he'll be through audio, obviously, for the interview. So it should be good.
Yeah, absolutely. This is going to be amazing. We'll see you after this intro.
Keep it up. We the alumni, ripping it up while you were gun shy. Run it back, reincarnated, graduated and elevated. Past lives of fast times from our high school and beyond education. Take a listen, nostalgia's never distant. No disses on this track, we handle our business. NBA, JD, DPT, we got the stack. Hey Jim, it's time to bring our classmates back.
In a lot of ways, a legendary intro by the good man, Tyler Smith. But we have our guest here, Mitch. How you doing, Mitch?
I'm doing great. And as many people have said to me, I have a perfect face for radio. So the fact that my camera's not working is unfortunate, but probably beneficial.
So. We will take your word for it. Absolutely. Welcome to the Alumni Podcast. We're going to want to hear your story. I'm going to shift it up to Tyler, and he's going to ask you a couple questions.
Yeah. All right, Mitch. So we always kind of start with our quick, 0 to 10 high school experience. How would you grade that on a sliding scale there? 10 being the best thing ever, 1 being wouldn't want to relive a single day. Where was that fall for you?
That's a good question. I know a lot of people who would like to go back to high school knowing what they know now. But if the question has to do with high school during high school, I would say it was probably at least an 8, maybe a 9. So, yeah, I liked high school a lot.
This guy gave us that might be the first 9 I've ever heard.
The first 9 that we've ever gotten.
I think that's the first 9. Samo must have been way better back in the day before.
Yeah, I want to go to Samo back then. I don't know.
Could be.
That's incredible. Okay, well, that's awesome. We'll have to explore more about that high score. Obviously, that's good. That's good. I think we're ready for the hot seat. If you're ready, Jim.
I think we are ready for the hot seat. The prize segment of the Alumni Podcast thus far. It's one that no one skips, but let's go.
Absolutely. So here, Mitch, we got 6 questions. You have 2 hall passes. So if you need to pass on any of these, too hot to handle, you just kind of let us know and we'll skip right through. First one is going to be, who was your high school crush? And did you ever take a shot at letting them know that?
Well, that's a good question. I probably, over the 3 years that I was in high school, had several crushes, and most of them knew it. Well, actually, to be fair, no. One of my crushes that didn't know it at the time was a classmate named Debbie Tansley, and her married name now is Crippen. And I did ask her out, and we were going to go to a restaurant downtown LA that required that you go up many floors in an elevator. And she had the best excuse to say no. She told me that she was claustrophobic and couldn't go in an elevator. So I saw her at our like 20th reunion, I guess. And I mentioned that to her, and she didn't remember it, but she said, "I'm sure I made that up."
Oh my gosh, that's
the truth comes out later.
Yeah. We're still good friends, and she's having a great life, and I am too. So we're happy.
That's awesome. That is huge, man. That's awesome. Question 2 is, did you have anybody at Samo that you really didn't get along with? Any maybe fights or issues with anybody? How was your high school bullying experience, if there was one?
So there probably was one guy who bullied me a lot, and I don't like to speak ill of the dear departed, but he did. And I'm Jewish, and he turns out to be anti-Semitic, and that was probably the root cause of the problem. But I never understood that at the time. He just bullied me, and I never understood why.
Wow. Okay.
That's unfortunate, honestly.
Yeah. But only, in a class of, in a school of 3,000 people, in a class of 1,000 people, to only be able to tell you one. I'm not telling you that other people weren't unfriendly.
Yeah.
The one that is unfriendly and tells me he hated me since high school. But I never felt like he bullied me. And, you're allowed to not love people. So it's okay.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah, it's okay.
Only one. That's, could have been worse. All right.
It's better than our year, trust me.
I know, right?
Yeah.
Didn't get much better. Question 3. Did you drink in high school, and why or why not?
I did not. I'm not telling you I never had a drink in high school, because that would be unfair, because I don't necessarily remember. Okay. Not because I was drinking and I don't remember. I just, it just wasn't a part of the lifestyle. I was an athlete, not necessarily, but I was an athlete, so I would not be inclined to do that anyway.
Okay, what sport did you play in high school?
So it's a funny story too. I started playing water polo. Okay, and the funny story. So you guys obviously don't know me, but in high school I was 5'6" and I weighed about 120 pounds. And when I first in my sophomore year, I entered high school in St. Louis, because that's where I was living at the time, because we were taking care of my grandmother, and I wanted to play football. And my mother did not want me to play football, because you could get hurt really bad. So I went to see the football coach when I started school, and I asked him, if I could join the team. Mm-hmm. And he very professionally said, "I'm not sure I have a uniform that will fit you." Okay. So I ended up going out for water polo. Okay. And I came home after my first day in water polo, and I told my mom, I said, "Do you know what the most dangerous sport in high school is?" She said, "No." I said, "Field hockey," because nobody played lacrosse back then. So I said, "Field." And she said, "Oh, okay. Do you know what the second most dangerous sport is?" She said, "Football." I said, "No, water polo." So, because you'd be surprised what goes on under the water. Okay. And I was a goalie.
That water polo is like rugby in water. It's just the same thing, just rugby in water. I'm like, that's badass.
I was the goalie. So, people would make the mistake of swimming in on me, but they didn't realize until a little bit later they had to go back out where they were, and I helped them.
Very nice.
So I played water polo. I was on the swim team. I was on the track team for one semester. I was on the baseball team for tryouts. I was on the wrestling team for a semester. Wow. Basically, I didn't want to do PE, and the best way to not do PE was to be on a sports team.
Sports, yeah.
Yeah, so water polo is a winter sport.
Right.
Swimming is a summer sport. So I had to find, water polo is a fall sport. Swimming is a summer sport. I had to find a winter sport. And so I did track, I did wrestling, and I must have done something else. Maybe it was baseball that I fooled myself for a little while. But anyway, I just found something to do to stay out of PE. Yeah.
That's cool.
Multi-sport athlete. I respect that. Question 4, Mitch, is going to be, are you currently north or south of a 6-figure income?
Well, I'm mostly retired. So sure. I'm still north of a 6-figure income, because I get Social Security, my wife gets Social Security, and I still am a professional speaker, which we'll talk more about later on. And
amazing.
So, cool. Yeah. So yeah, I do make more than 6 figures.
Nice. Very, very cool. Question 5. 2 more here. You're doing pretty good.
Yeah,
What was your
thanks.
most embarrassing or awkward high school moment that you can recall? It may be that rejection in the elevator, but I'm not sure. Something top that.
No, because she didn't go out with me, so I never.
Okay, yeah, you never got to that
I
point.
never got to use that. What was my most embarrassing? I'm sure there was one. Oh, I know what. Well, it's the only thing I can think of. It doesn't mean there wasn't something. So I graduated and I worked at Harrison Frank on the Santa Monica Mall, which is a men's clothing store. And I also I worked part-time in the shoe department. And so I liked shoes. And so we were wearing blue. And so I needed to wear blue shoes to go with my blue everything else. Come on, right? But I couldn't get navy blue shoes because I have my feet size 7.5. So, they don't, shoes come in 8 or 8.5 and higher. And if you want them smaller than that, you got to work on it. So I couldn't get navy blue shoes. So I had powder blue shoes, and people laughed at me because I had powder blue shoes. That's the only thing I can remember for sure. I'm sure there were others, but maybe I blocked them out of my mind.
That's fair. That's fair. And last question is, did you have your first kiss in high school? And if so, who was it with? If you could name names.
So the answer to that question is probably, but I don't remember who it was. Okay. Yep. I remember my girlfriend in high school, but I don't remember the girls before. And she was my girlfriend in my senior year. So it doesn't mean I didn't date before then, but none of the girls were memorable. I mean, I went to high school with Robin Lennon, who's a cousin of the Lennon sisters. Okay. And I think I did kiss her once. And then I went out on a date with a really nice girl who happened to be Mormon. And I think her parents did not want her to keep dating because, first of all, I wasn't Mormon, and second of all, I was Jewish, so it was really very unlikely to become Mormon. I don't think they were anti-Semitic. I just think they were Mormon. So I never kissed her, but and so like I said, I'm pretty sure it was my first kiss was in high school, but I don't remember who. And hopefully, if she remembers, she's not pissed at me now. So.
Yeah, we all regret our first kiss. Not like our technique, obviously, right? So,
that's right.
Wow. Okay, well, you survived the hot seat. I think we could take him to the Wayback Machine, Jim, if you're ready.
Yeah, fun fact, he's probably one of 4 people that have used no passes on this. So
yes, that's
true. Those are fun questions. I did, just to go back for a second, I did remember where I had my first kiss, but I don't remember who it was. I had a date on my birthday, and I turned 16 on my birthday. So I had to pass my driver's test in order to drive on my date, because I wasn't going to have my mother take me out on a date yet again. So we went to a party right down on the beach next to the Sereno Club. Somebody lived down there. I don't know who it was. And I remember we played Spin the Bottle.
Okay.
Yeah. So undoubtedly I got this there. Yeah, so.
Good way to do it.
Yeah.
Very cool. I'm going to take you way back, Mitch.
Okay.
I'm going to take you way back to 1969. Where I found out some of the hit songs were Ramblin' Gamblin' Man Bob, Baby I'm For Real by the Originals, I Heard It Through the Grapevine by Marvin Gaye, and Gimme Gimme Good Lovin' by Crazy Elephant. Hit movies at the time were Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid.
Oh, yeah. Good kid.
Easy Rider and True Grit.
Yep.
Some of the hot TV shows at the time were Hawaii Five-0 on CBS, Mannix on CBS, and the Carol Burnett Show on CBS.
Yeah, okay.
But me and Tyler were not around, not on planet Earth at the time.
Yeah, right.
Maybe flowing through the celestials. But, you graduated high school. What was your principal's name? Do you remember?
George Drake.
George Drake. You shook George Drake's hand?
The pool was affectionately called Drake's Lake.
Yeah.
Okay. Because we didn't have a pool. And so the swim team and the water polo team, we played and practiced up at Santa Monica College. And Dr. Drake wanted us to have a pool. and he figured out how we could fund getting a pool, and they affectionately called it Drake's Lake.
Nice.
And now I understand
That's
they're
cool.
demolishing it.
Yeah, they're changing a lot at SAMOHI here.
Yeah,
I haven't been back in
they're
quite a
growing.
while, but it looks very different. You know.
Yeah.
But the point is, you shook his hand and you walked across that stage.
Yes.
And I don't know if they had grad night at the end of that night.
We all went to Disneyland.
You guys got Disneyland. We got ours was a hanging tent in Hawaii. It was like all the SAMOHI campus.
Oh, okay. Yeah, no, we all went to Disneyland in a bus, and then we came back on the bus, and some of us went home and some of us didn't.
Dang.
Wow. You went to Disneyland. You enjoyed yourself.
Oh yeah.
You finished that up. The next morning, you wake up. You're a high school graduate.
Yes.
The world awaits you. The premise of this podcast is to find people's stories from the moment that they graduated high school to the moment that they found their path, and all the way until they got here in this podcast seat talking to me and Tyler.
Sounds good.
With that being said, Mitch, the floor is yours.
Yeah. Well, so, when I was really little, I wanted to be a baseball player, but I have no talent for that. So from the day I didn't want to be a baseball player anymore, I knew I wasn't going to be. I was going to be an engineer. I always knew I was going to be an engineer. My dad was an engineer, so that may have influenced me, but he was a mechanical engineer and I was an electrical engineer. But so I applied to college prior to graduating, and just give you a little insight into my personality. I went into the counselor's office and I got a list of the top 20 engineering schools in the United States. Okay. And I decided which ones to apply to. And you might think, well, you must have started at the top. No, I went and got their catalogs and I applied to the 4 or 5 of them that had more girls than boys at the university. Come on. It's a top 20 school. How am I going to go wrong? Right. So I didn't apply to MIT. I didn't apply to Caltech. Okay. So I applied to UCLA, Stanford, Georgetown, surprisingly, and Northwestern. And my father was very happy that I got accepted at UCLA because it was a public school and the other 3 are quite private and quite expensive. And my dad had graduated from UCLA, so he was special like that. So I knew I was going to UCLA come the end of the summer. And I was going to go to engineering school. So it was just, what am I going to do for the summer? And probably 2 weeks after graduation, maybe a little less or a little more, but right around then, the guy who became my college roommate for many years, Ken Ellsworth, he and I decided to move into an apartment in Culver City. And
Nice.
So sometime probably in July, maybe July 1st, we moved into our apartment in Culver City. And I moved every 9 months, give or take, until I graduated college. And it had nothing to do with women getting pregnant in 9 months. It just worked out that way. So I lived in Culver City, and then I lived in Santa Monica, and then I lived in Santa Monica, and then I moved several different places around Santa Monica. After that, Ken stopped being my roommate a couple, 3 years in. He got a girlfriend, and that worked out fine for him. Then I graduated from UCLA and was trying to decide if I was going to go to graduate school. My dad had gotten me a job for the summer in the company he worked for. And I learned more in those 3 months than I had learned in 4 years in college. So I stopped the idea of going to graduate school and applied for a job. And you guys probably know this, but you normally apply for a job before you graduate from college so that you can get the job. So I was out of applying season, so to speak, but I got a job with a company that was in the consumer electronics space, and they developed the first under $100 handheld calculator that would fit in your shirt pocket. Now, you had to have a kind of a wide shirt pocket, but we did have pictures of it. And So I didn't design it or anything like that. I was what's called a product engineer, which meant my job was to make sure it was good, useful, reliable, et cetera. And I was responsible for knowing everything about it and being able to explain it to our customers. Because, other than the HP 35, which was pretty much the only calculator out there,
Right.
4-function calculators were not inexpensive, so people didn't own them. So I got to go to my first trade show when I went to work for that company, and that was an experience and a half. There were several women at the trade show who were secretaries during the year, and during that 1 week period, they were professionally otherwise employed. Okay, and I got to talking to one of them, and I said, "How do you do this?" She said, "It's very simple. I make more money in 1 week than I make the other 51 weeks of the year. So if I don't like my boss, I can tell him to bite me because I have enough money to keep going." But
Right.
I mean, that was an eye-opening thing to a kid who'd never been anywhere, and just crazy stuff is going on. It was a Consumer Electronics Show, which at the time was in Chicago. It's now only in Las Vegas, but 100,000 people came to that show. Anyway, so that job, I was there for a year, and they decided to relocate engineering to New Jersey. Now, I had never been to New Jersey in my life, but I did hear that New Jersey was the armpit of America. So I decided I didn't want to go. I had to look for another job. Okay. And I had an offer to work for a company that was working on creating what we now know as a laser disc. Okay. But I took a job with a small instrumentation company that one of the more famous things that I was involved with was if the Alaskan pipeline springs a leak, my circuits alert them that it sprung a leak. And you'd say, "Well, how did you do that?" I said, "It's really very simple. You measure how much oil is coming in at the beginning of the pipeline. You measure how much oil is coming out at the end of the pipeline. And if it varies by too much, there must be a leak." Okay. Now, the complication is that oil has a much different density at the top of the pipeline because it's so much colder than it does at the bottom of the pipeline. So the real issue was figuring out how to do that. And so I designed all the circuits, and then we got introduced to a very new product that had just come out, and it was called a microprocessor, and it was a 4-bit microprocessor. And I thought, "Ooh, that's really cool," but I didn't have time to figure out how it worked, so we went with the old way. That company then got acquired, and I relocated from Cerritos out to Chatsworth, and that was a company that was involved in all kinds of flow measurement things and things like that. But I studied semiconductor physics in college, and I wasn't doing anything related to semiconductor physics. So I worked for them for 2 years, and then I decided I needed to get in the semiconductor business. So I applied to Motorola. And they invited me to come down there for an interview, which was in Austin, Texas. Now, the hysterical thing was I had just recently gotten divorced from a young lady who came from Texas and had wanted us to move there. And I said, "I'm not moving to Texas. Only an idiot would move to Texas." So I went down for the weekend just for fun. And it was a great place. I mean, literally, they could have offered me any job and I would have taken it. But they offered me 2 different jobs, and I took one that changed my whole career, which is I became a marketing professional, a product marketing engineer. And in order to have the job, you had to have an engineering degree, but it was really a marketing job. And I was really worried that I was going to lose my engineering expertise by doing that. And I talked to a couple of guys who did it, and they said, "Nope, you won't." And so I took the job, and I stopped being a design engineer and became a marketing engineer. And the rest of my career evolved from marketing. When I look back, I'd say, I probably would have been a good engineer all along, but I never would have been great. but I turned out to be a great marketer. And I got promoted inside Motorola from marketing engineer to strategic marketing. And I'd had 5 bosses in 2 years. And if I'd survived the last one, I probably would have been the manager of marketing. But what I tell people, I can work for an idiot or an asshole, but not both. And he was both.
I like that.
So a headhunter called on a regular basis. So this time she called and I said, yeah, find me a job. So she found me a job in Silicon Valley. Big surprise, because that's where all the semiconductor companies are. So I moved out to Silicon Valley to work for a company called AMI, American Microsystems. And they hired me as their marketing manager. They promoted me to director of marketing. And then they moved me to another business unit that was starting up. It was basically gate arrays, but it doesn't make it. It was a different product line. And that was a lot of fun. But one of the guys who had worked for me in microprocessor marketing came up with a business idea that he really wanted to go get funded. So we're talking 1981. Okay. Just to calibrate you on timeline. We're talking about 1981. And he really wanted to go see if we could get it funded. So he asked me to be the president, and he would be the VP of engineering. Another guy we worked with was going to be the VP of marketing. And we went out to see if we could raise money. And sure enough, we could raise enough money to start the company. And so we did. So we all left AMI. They were not happy with us, but we left. And we had this startup company. And people say, well, what happened in the startup company? I said, we raised $5 million over time, and we spent $5,050,000. Bottom line is we ran out of funding. He was a really good guy, still is a really good guy, but there was a fundamental mistake in what he wanted the customer to do, and they weren't willing to do it, and so it blew everything up. So we're now talking 1984, right? So I started looking for a job, and I ended up going to work for, I'm doing a complete blank on the name, but it was a semiconductor company that was owned by Epson, the Japanese company, and the guy who founded it was still running it. He was eccentric, but he was an interesting guy. But I worked for him for 9 months, and I just couldn't work for him anymore. So again, I looked for a job, and I got hired by Teledyne. The Teledyne that everybody knows the name because of Waterpik or Lars pool heaters, or they have a number of brands. I ran the semiconductor companies, and I was there for 5 years, and I learned something very, very important in big corporations. Don't fire your boss's girlfriend. And I fired my boss's girlfriend, not because she was his girlfriend. I didn't care. In fact, I was the only person who didn't know she was sleeping with him. She was a problem. We don't need to go into the details, but she was a problem for me. And so I got permission from corporate to fire her. So I fired her, and he couldn't stop me because I fired her for a very legitimate reason, but he wanted to. So he got even with me. He made me fly to Japan to solve a problem I could have solved over the phone, but I was the only one who could solve it, and he knew I wasn't going to be there much longer. So we got to Japan, we solved the problem, and as I was getting on the plane to go back, he said, by the way, pack up your desk, you're done. And so that was that. And so that now we're talking end of 1990. So from 1991 until today, I have been a consultant and a professional speaker. I am part of a very small consulting company. And most of us now it's a lifestyle company for us. In other words, we work with people we feel like working with who don't give us too much trouble and find us because we're not working hard to find them. But we're a marketing and sales consulting company, helping companies grow revenue, generate revenue, et cetera. And in the meantime, I also became a professional speaker. And the way I did that, which is not necessarily the way you do it, but it's the way I did it, is when I was a CEO, so starting in the startup company, so 82, 83, I joined an organization which used to be called TEC, the Executive Committee. It changed its name, I think, in 1999 or 2000 to Vistage. Why, I don't know, but they did. But it's an organization of CEOs. So if you're a CEO, one of the things you'll learn is there's nobody to talk to. Okay. You can't talk to your board of directors if you even have one, because you don't want them to know you don't know what's going on. And you can't talk to your employees because it would scare the heck out of them if they knew you didn't know what was going on. So they set up these peer organizations. So there's like 50,000 members around the world. And in my group, we'd never had a speaker on the marketing topic. And I asked the chair, the facilitator, if we could get one. And he said, there aren't any good ones. And I said, well, if I came up with a talk, would you let me give it to the group? He said, sure. So I did. They liked it. And he told the organization that I was good, and they started booking me. But I had a job still. So I would only go out like once a month. But once I left Teledyne, I contacted them and I said, I'll speak as much as you want. And I got lots of bookings. And then that created leads to speak to companies and organizations and associations and things like that. And it's pretty much spread by word of mouth since then. And so I still speak to that organization. I speak for an organization called the Association of National Advertisers, which all the big companies belong to, because they focus on legal issues to keep legal issues from being a problem. They focus on the union contracts for the talent that does commercials, et cetera. And so all the big companies are members of that organization. And one of the benefits they get is they get a speaker to come to their company and talk. And so to this day, that's pretty much what I do. And then I get opportunities from people who've heard of me or heard about me. And that's in 20 minutes, that's my life.
That's your life.
Wow, there's a lot to unpack there. So I'm going to tell you, Mitch, how like the normal guest who comes on 14 years after high school, their story has been like thus far. And I want you to basically give them advice based off of this prototypical person. Okay. Person A who graduated from SAMOHI in 2010, went to college, incurred student debt, floated around with majors, couldn't really find a passion, and is maybe just now stumbling upon something that they feel like they want to do 14 years later, right? And a lot of people feel bad about where they are right now. And I know you're a motivational speaker, and I'm really interested in what you have to say about sales later. We'll start with, what would you say to somebody who is kind of floating around, hasn't really stumbled upon where they feel like they should be, and what kind of advice would you give them?
Yeah, so that's really good. And, I understand the problem. I cannot relate to the problem personally because I always knew what I wanted to do, and things sort of migrated around and worked out. But this is not my line at all. I just love it. And that is, if you love what you do, you'll never work a day in your life. Okay. And it's very important, in my opinion, for people to find something they're passionate about, because work-life balance happens when you love both aspects of your life, so to speak. Okay. I mean, if anything, if you ask my wife, she'll tell me I love my work too much. Okay. But she knew what she was getting into, when we got married. And so I'm not going to tell you it wasn't a little bit surprising, but it wasn't hugely surprising. So what I would say to people who still aren't sure what they would like to do, I would challenge that maybe they do know what they'd like to do, but they won't give themselves permission to do it. Wow. Either their peers have put pressure on them, their parents have put pressure on them, their family puts pressure on them, but they're afraid to do what they want to do. Okay. I mean, my nephew, who has been out of college probably 6 or 8 years, he's decided that he shouldn't work for a company for more than 5 years. And so he's been with this company for almost 5 years. So he's thinking he has to go find another job, even though he likes the job he has. Okay. And so, he's not going to listen to his mother or his father. But, I told him, I said, do whatever you want to do, but don't. My father worked for the same company. After 1 year out of college, he worked for one other company, and then he worked for the same company until he retired. Okay. And when I changed jobs every 2 years, he thought I was nuts. Okay. Right. Didn't make any sense to him. Right. My son worked for the same company for 25 years and then changed jobs and got a promotion at the other company. So there's no one true answer. There are people who won't hire you if you have worked at too many places. And there are people who won't hire you if you haven't worked at more than one place. So the good news is there's lots of opportunities out there. So give yourself permission to follow something you love. And if you don't know what you love, but you do know what you're doing isn't something you love, try something different, okay? Especially when you're younger. Because as you get older, it gets riskier. And when we did our startup company in 1981, I was 30. In fact, they had my 30th birthday party at the company. And if I wanted to do a startup company when I was 45, that could be potentially quite risky, okay? Because you only hear about the startup companies that succeed, but there's a lot more that don't succeed, and especially if they're not venture capital funded. We were venture capital funded, so we had a higher probability of succeeding, and we still screwed it up. So I guess that would be my best advice is if you don't love what you're doing, find something you think you might love and try it. But don't sit still, because doing the same thing over and over again is the definition of insanity, especially if you think it's going to be different.
Yeah.
That's incredible. It sounds like you've stumbled upon your skill of sales and speaking like around your 30s. Is that correct? If I calculate it,
I have always been a public speaker, so to speak. To say, in other words, I remember in grammar school, I was asked to give a speech for I don't know what reason. Okay. And at the last minute, the principal decided to ask those of us who were speaking what we were going to talk about. And he edited some things so that he wouldn't have the problems that you guys see today in the world. Yeah. But I mean, people, I mean, the biggest fear most people have is public speaking. It never bothered me as long as I knew what I was talking about. In fact, the only time I have a problem is if I have to give a speech that I've had to memorize. If I like talking to you guys, I mean, we didn't prepare this. I had a general idea what you were going to do, but I didn't know. But if I had to memorize a speech, I'd be more worried about missing a word, okay, than I would about what I was talking about. Yeah. So I'm what they call a content speaker, not a motivational speaker. I tend to be motivational because I'm excited about what I'm talking about. But really what I'm talking about is whatever my expertise is and sharing it with you on that subject, which is kind of like what we're doing right now.
Yeah. Love that. So here, I have a question for you, Mitch, and it's been itching me to ask you. Me and Tyler are now in our 30s. We just kind of early 30s. And we don't know what the next years are going to look like for us, but we do know that you've obviously experienced from your 30s to your 40s. What's that gap like? What should we do during this time that would benefit us into the next 10 years?
Yeah, that's a real good question. And you should do what you need to do now that you won't be able to do later. What I mean by that is, a lot of people, they have a formula that says, oh, I need to get married by 20. I mean, my first wife, who came from Texas, if she was 15 years old and not married, she was an old maid. Okay. I mean, that was just how the small town in Texas that
yeah.
she
Right.
grew up in, which happened to be the one Lyndon Johnson grew up in. So
Right.
different people are socialized in different ways, okay? But there are big things that happen in your life. Getting married and building a family is probably the biggest thing. And so if you've got some things you need to do before you get married and start a family, you should do those before, because it generally doesn't work out if you do them afterwards. Your spouse generally is not big on that unless you made a deal with him or her beforehand that that's what was going to go on. So that's probably the biggest issue. Something I did not do, but I lucked out anyway, and people told me about it, and you just don't think about it, is save. Okay. If you save $10 a week, even, okay.
Yeah.
By the time you're 60, you'll have a lot of money. Okay. Because of compound interest and everything else. But save doesn't mean put in an emergency fund for when you want to go to Europe. Okay. I mean, literally save it. Okay. And so in today's world, there's a tax advantages to creating an IRA account or whatever, so that you can deduct it from your income tax. So I encourage you to save more than you think you can, because if you save what you think you can, you won't be saving enough, right? And it costs a lot of money to retire, because you still have to support yourself in the style to which you used to be able to live. Okay. I mean, when you retire, your income goes way down, but you're not going to change your lifestyle. Oh, look, dear, we retired. We have to move into a shack because we can't afford this anymore. So you need a substantial savings. And I encourage you to start early. I mean, I tell people in their 20s, start already. Okay.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
But for sure, you guys in your early 30s, start doing that as quickly as you can, and put it where you can't leave it, can't touch it, so to speak.
I was going to ask, what are your thoughts on retirement? Is that something that you've kind of thought of since you were our age, or is that something that kind of sprung up on you later in age, or what do you want to retire into?
I don't know. Yeah, I don't know if I'll ever be retired. Okay. I worked full time as a consultant and a speaker. So, I didn't go to the office 8 to 5 and things like that, but I worked at least 40 hours a week, one way or another, until 2018. Okay. And in 2018, my wife and I decided to move to Reno, Nevada. And I made a deal with her that I would cut back to half time if we moved to Reno, Nevada. Okay. Mm-hmm. And so I did that. And then COVID came along, and I cut back to less than a quarter time, because there was nothing to do. Right. And I decided I kind of liked that. So I still like working, but I used to fly 3 times a week. Okay. I used to rent cars 3 days a week. I mean, I was on an airplane a lot. All right. And now if I fly twice a month, that's about right. Okay. And so, I've gotten used to having other things to do, but I don't think I would ever completely retire, because I like what I do. Like I said earlier, if you love what you do, you never work a day in your life. So I like it. But the good news is, if I don't think I'm going to like what you want me to do, I can just say, no, I'm too busy.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And, some people like working from home. My problem with working from home, which is why when we started our consulting company, we got an office, because I like the camaraderie of working with a team of people. And I still think that's important. And some humans don't care. That's okay. But I think having interaction and contact with people who have a common purpose, which usually a business has a common purpose, it gives you something to focus on. That's the other piece of advice I'd give you is, don't go to work for a company where it's a job. Go to work for a company where whatever their purpose is, you can get behind and love that it will be successful. Whether you ever get credit for it or not, it will be successful. It's like, I worked for the first company that had under $100 calculator that fit in your pocket. I didn't invent it, but it was fun. Okay.
Mhm.
And so getting involved with things that are fun, it's fun.
That's underrated advice. We don't usually hear like have fun with your employment. It's usually like dread it or do something super serious and high risk, and so this is a kind of a breath of fresh air in a lot of ways.
And I don't mind doing something high risk. I mean, we did a startup company. Okay.
Right.
I'm gonna pick your brain off air a bit about that.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But it's very, so you're saying to take risks now, like this would be
if you don't have a family to support, you can do it. And when you're younger, I screwed up at the age of 31, 32. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And I got hired to be president of 4 divisions of a very large company. All right. So,
amazing.
And there are people who won't hire you if you haven't failed. Okay? They have a belief that if I hire you and you haven't failed, maybe that's because you're going to fail with me. Because if you haven't failed, you probably haven't tried very much.
Mm-hmm. And you must have learned a lot of lessons from that era, right? Like having a startup that didn't. Okay.
I learned that the venture investors who funded us,
mm-hmm.
and many venture investors aren't anywhere near as smart as you think they're going to be. Okay. They could not really help us with the foundational problem we didn't realize we had. And to be fair, they shouldn't. Okay. But they missed it too. So they didn't ask the right questions. And so when I've served on boards of directors of for-profit companies, I tend to ask more challenging questions than some of the other board members will ask, because I remember that I need to at least get them thinking about it. I may not know the answer, but I need them to think about it.
Mm-hmm. Wow, that's amazing. You are a wealth of knowledge. Me and Tyler can probably sit for an entire day and just dissect everything you're saying. But we appreciate you coming on, and we're going to send you into the lightning round just for preservation of time and respect of your time.
You bet.
It's good. Thank you.
All right, another 6 question round here, Mitch. First one is going to be: do you remember what your favorite off-campus lunch spot was during SAMOHI?
Well, we had an open campus, but we didn't go off campus. Okay. And most of us didn't drive, so we tended to eat in the cafeteria. Okay. And we survived it. Okay. But my favorite Santa Monica eating spot to this day is Campos up on 23rd and Pico. It's had various names, and the most hysterical thing is, just real quick, so on the corner was a Mexican fast food restaurant, and next to it other fast food restaurants opened and were put out of business by the Mexican fast food restaurant. And then Campos, by whatever the name it used to be, opened up, and I'm looking at it going, let me get this straight. Every fast food restaurant on the planet has been put out of business by this Mexican restaurant, and now you're going to compete with them. They put them out of business, and then to this day, they're still there. And I love their avocado burritos.
Okay,
very good,
very cool. Question 2: what was the hardest class you remember at SAMOHI?
The hardest class I remember was calculus, and the reason why it was hard is because I never took trigonometry. When I came to SAMOHI in the second semester of the 10th grade, I had done all the math classes that high school offered, except calculus. So they put me in the calculus class, but I didn't have trigonometry. So I didn't really understand a lot of it. And the teacher helped me. And I did fine, but that was the hardest class of all, I would say.
Wouldn't have expected the engineer to say calculus, but that's fair.
Well, you remember I told you I probably would have never been a great engineer, and that's one of the reasons. that was one of the reasons. I didn't have a solid mathematical background.
Right. Okay. Question 3. If you could relive any single year of high school, which one would you choose to relive?
Oh, my senior year, without question. It was great fun. I got a girlfriend who I really, really liked, and she liked me too. Her mother didn't like us very much, but
Gotcha.
But she did. So yeah, my senior year was great fun, and we still our class has a reunion every 5 years, whether we need it or not.
Oh, that's super cool.
How many of you attended?
All of them. The first 5 years we had one every year, and then at 5. Our president for life, Steve Mount, organized us to have one every 5 years. And it happened. It's coming up this September. And we used to do a lot of fancy stuff, which cost $100 a person or something like that. And several people have said, look, some of us are coming a long way. We don't necessarily have that much money. Could we do something less expensive? And so we came up with something really good that coming up this year that's only going to cost like $40 a person.
So you're obviously not going to Disneyland. That's what you're saying.
No.
That would cost way too much.
Yeah. No, grad night was great fun. It was great fun because I went with my girlfriend. And so it was super.
Yeah.
Nice. Question 4. Would you rather have a late start Wednesday or an early release Friday?
Of what?
Starting school late on Wednesday so you get to sleep in. Or would you rather get out of school early on a Friday if you had to choose between the two?
Oh, I'd get out of school early on Friday so I could go to the beach.
Okay.
Good choice.
That's a good choice. I was not a morning person, so I appreciated the late start Wednesday that we had.
Yeah, I hear you.
Did they have that when you were there?
We had none of those options. School started and ended at the same time every day, except for when we had Teacher Pick Your Nose Day, and we didn't go to school at all. So,
okay.
Yeah,
that makes sense.
It was way more rigid back in the day. Hey, they just finally allowed girls to wear pants in 1969.
Wow. Okay, that is a different era, sir.
Yeah. That is a different era for sure.
Yeah. Oh yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
That's wild. Okay. Speaking of girls, who do you remember as the hottest teacher at SAMO, if you can recall?
I can't. All of my female teachers were ancient. They were probably 40. But no, I can't remember any female teacher in high school that I thought was anything other than my teacher.
That's understood.
Understood. Last question is going to be, what song from your high school era is still on your playlist today?
Oh, pretty much any of the Beach Boys songs about the beach. Okay. Surfing Safari, Surfing USA, California. I loved the Beach Boys. So.
Yeah.
Nice. That's a classic, man. Very cool. Well, you survived the lightning round. You can kind of wrap it up here, Jim, if you want.
All right. Last plug and thoughts. We leave the floor to you, Mitch, to give a message to not only our class, but your class or anyone that you want to plug anything that you want. If you're doing something that you want people to follow, you can throw that in there, and I'll leave the stage to be yours.
Okay. Well, my hobby is ice cream. I have a blog about ice cream shops because I travel all over the world, all over the country and in Canada. I visit ice cream shops wherever I can, whenever I can.
Cool.
And I blog about them. And so if you have an interest in ice cream, regardless of where you live, if you go to icecreamadventures.blog, you will find several years worth of ice cream shops. And I usually post at least once a week, sometimes twice a week, depending on how many shops I have in the backlog. But ice cream is my thing. So,
okay, icecreamadventures.blog is across the bottom of the screen. For anyone interested in that, I'm interested. I love ice cream.
Me too.
So we'll definitely enjoy that. Thank you very much, Mitch, for coming on here. being brave enough to share your story with us and any of the alumni from SAMO. I'm sure a lot of people will take note and reach out to you.
Love it.
When we post this on the alumni page. We appreciate your time and thank you very much.
And thank you guys. You did a great job.
Thank you, Mitch. Appreciate you.
All
Take
right.
care.
It's the Alumni Podcast, guys. Love.
Peace.